Good morning, everybody. Senator Whitehouse and I are pleased to welcome you to this forum on the impacts of climate change, sponsored by the Bicameral Task Force on Climate Change. And I thank all the panelists for being here. Your voices and your stories are ones that Congress urgently needs to hear. You should also know that this forum is being recorded so that members of Congress and the public who can't be with us today can view it online. The world's leading scientists agree climate change is occurring, is primarily caused by human activities, and threatens the world we live in. Your experiences on the coast of Alaska confirm what scientists are telling us. That we are already feeling the impacts of our climate change. Melting sea ice and permafrost, extreme coastal erosion, these are not theoretical threats to someone in the distant future. Your village is facing those damaging impacts of climate change today. Unfortunately, many members of Congress continue to deny that climate change is even happening. In fact, in about an hour, the Energy and Commerce Committee will be considering a Republican bill that would eliminate the Environmental Protection Agency's existing authority to address carbon pollution from coal-fired power plants. At a time when we urgently need to move forward with real solutions, House Republicans want to bury their heads in the sand and block progress. That's why we're so pleased you are here today. You are on the front lines of climate change impacts. You understand that unchecked climate change does have consequences. Congress needs to hear you describe how a rapidly changing climate is exacting a tremendous toll on our coastal communities. And I look forward to your testimony today and learning from you. But before we call on the panelists, I'd like to recognize my friend and colleague, Senator Whitehouse, for an opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Waxman. I'm grateful to you for your leadership on the Bicameral Task Force on climate change, and I'm delighted to see that you've managed to attract several of your colleagues. I've not yet been so successful, but perhaps we will have some others arrive. And I know that a number of my colleagues, including Senator Begich from Alaska, are meeting with our witnesses later today. So I hope this is a productive visit to Washington for all of you. The comment that Representative Waxman made, that yours is a message that needs to be heard in Washington, is really what is at the heart of this hearing. We had a storm in Rhode Island recently, and it washed up against a shoreline that has eroded dramatically over the years. And I spoke to a woman whose small house had tipped over the edge of the land and onto where the beach had eroded underneath, very much like the photographs of your village, the photographs of Kivalina, the photographs that we see through a lot of coastal communities. And she remembered as a girl, in that same house, was her parents' and grandparents' house beforehand, that the house had a yard, it had a nice lawn, and then there was a road on the other side of the lawn, and then there was parking on the other side of the road, and then there was so much beach that she can remember as a little girl running quickly across the beach because the sand beating down on the sun beating down on the sand made it so hot that she had to run to get to her feet in the cool ocean water. All of that was gone. The beach, the parking, the road, the lawn, and now the house was just leaning over. So from the very little estate, Rhode Island, to the very big estate, Alaska, where the ocean meets the land, we are seeing these consequences. And it is immensely frustrating that around the Capitol, the barricade of lies that special interests and their money have maintained prevent us from doing anything serious about it, because when we go home, we see the real-life consequences. So I'm delighted that you are here. I thank you so much for taking the trouble to travel a very long way to bring us the story of your village and what is happening to it as a result of the changes we're imposing on our climate. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. We have with us Representative Joe Garcia from Florida and Representative Jared Huffman from California, and I'm delighted you're here, and others may be joining us as well. And I want to thank the witnesses who are here. to be on our panel. Each of you is a resident of Shishmaref, an Inupiat Eskimo village located on a small barrier island 5 miles from mainland Alaska. Stanley Toktu is the current president and former mayor of the native village. Tony Wayana serves as president of the board of the Shismaref Native Corporation. Deborah Hersed is a 17-year-old high school senior, and they are joined by Fanny Wayana and Peggy Hersed, who will be available to answer questions. We thank you very much for being here. Mr. Toktu, would you like to begin? Be sure that on the base of the mic, there's a button to push so that turns it on.
Thank you, Representative Henry Waxman. My name is Stanley Toktu. I am a former mayor and current president of a village, native village of Shismaref. A common fear in Shismaref is that it will become the next King Island. King Island was another island in Alaska that lost its whole community to climate change. Its people were evacuated and its culture was almost lost. We are scared to end up like the King Island people. As mayor, one of our biggest challenges I faced was relocation, finding a safe place for our kid to call home, a new site that could offer protection for our culture and our traditional values. We live on an island, which is approximately 3 miles long by 1/4 mile wide. Our way to and from the mainland, where we get our food or supplies, is through the airport. In the past year, one of our major dirt roads was severely damaged to this previous storm. This same dirt road protecting the airport, and the water came very close to it. Based on my experience, I expect that the next few storms will lead the sand foundation under the airport to erode and the runway would collapse. We don't have a plan if the airport was to wash out. It's not just our infrastructure at risk, it's our homes. We have to put houses on skids so they can be mobile, so we can move quickly to a safe area during a storm. This past few years, we had to put 18 homes to a safe area before a storm, put on skids before the storm hits, This is necessary because homes were already falling into the water, to the ocean. We lost 2 homes in 2005 that were not moved in time. A lot of our community members are relocating. In serious storms, people are forced to evacuate, and when their homes are destroyed, they are stranded, away from home, and with no way to call home or to come home. As our people leave and relocate to other places voluntarily, they won't be able to come back. We are losing our people and our culture. We have a warm and communal culture that works together and lives off the land for subsistence. We hunt, we fish, and we have traditions that we try to pass on to our children. We will lose that if we are relocated to another area with other people who doesn't appreciate our way of life. No matter what your politics, you can't ignore the facts that our village are being impacted by climate change on a daily basis, and we need to do something about this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Wayana?
Thank you. Thank you for having. Thank you for having us testify to your committee. My name is Tony Wheelwana Sr. I'm the president of the board of the Shismaref Native Corporation. In Shismaref, we continue to live our lifestyle passed down generation to generation for the past 4,000 years. The yearly spring hunt is our main season of hunting for our winter supply of seal oil and dried meat, which is the main staple of our diet. During the spring hunt, we hunt bearded seals, wallers, and other seals such as the spotted seal and common seals. That's all changing, though, as the climate changes. The hunting season from the past 18 years has been getting much shorter. This year was particularly strange. We saw rain in November and December. Usually our fishing starts at the end of October when the lagoon freezes over and we can get to the mainland over the ice. But this year we couldn't fish until mid-December. That means we've had to buy more food from the grocery store, spending more money each month on food to replace the food we would otherwise hunt or fish for. Or we would have to travel further during those times to try to hunt caribou or other large mammals, which are becoming more rare. Our hunting seasons are shortening, so is the lifespan of our infrastructure. Originally, our seawall, designed by the Army Corps of Engineers, was supposed to have a lifespan. So it was supposed to have a 25-year lifespan, but by the time we built it, because of projections of rising sea level, it now only going to be good for 15 years. Our small island is only 3 miles long, and not the entire island is developable. A seawall that can protect our community for more than 15 years is not very useful. All of our community investments now face short lifespans and begs the question of how long are we going to use this before it is no longer useful. The answer is too short to justify the investment. We are losing out on jobs and economic drivers because we aren't able to invest in our community. Kids are moving out of the community. For instance, our daughter left 2-3 months ago because there are no jobs, there are no rental housing opportunities. Even we are looking into moving. I've now applied for jobs outside of Shishmaref in order to get us someplace safer. Even though we have a home, we have to move to someplace with better economic opportunities. The shortening winter season is impacting our local subsistence culture and our ability to create jobs and investment for our community. It's attacking us from all sides. We need our government to attack climate change from all sides too, with national and local legislation to help protect our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wayana. Deborah Herswood, pleased to have you here. I want to hear from you.
Hi. Hello, my name is Deborah Hershud, and I'm a 17-year-old senior from Shishmaref. I've thought a lot about climate change, and it really does scare me. One day, Shishmaref just won't be there. This is where I grew up, and this is where my grandparents grew up, and where my grandparents' parents grew up. And one day I hope to come back to Shishmaref after college, but I don't know if it'll be there. The changing climate affects my daily life. I just got a snow machine, and we used to go right out and play out on the sea, but it's getting more difficult because the land is a lot narrower than it used to be. It can be scary because I need to make sure the ice is thick enough to be safe. We've been talking, even before I knew we were coming here, we've been talking about climate change at school. And my teacher has told us a lot of stories about when she was younger and when she was my age. She said that the land was about 15 feet higher when she was in school. We lived away from Shismaref for several years, but one thing I used to like to do when I was younger was go looking for eggs near the lagoon. But when I moved back, I was surprised to see that all the land was just gone. I remember one afternoon, my mom came to get me from my grandparents' house. As a result from the storm, the back of our house and the back of our stairs were dangling over the cliff in the ocean. It was scary. We had to immediately move all our things out of the house, and we went to go stay with my grandparents. And later that year, we moved away. Shishmaref is changing faster than I can grow up. And climate change is a problem that has been around longer than I have. It's really unfair to be giving up my home and where I grew up in my culture for a problem that I don't have the power to solve by myself. But that's why I'm here, and that's why we're asking for your help to address the issue of climate change at a national level. Thank you for having me here today.
Thank you very much. Senator Whitehouse?
Start off. Should we hear from?
No, the others are here to answer questions. Is that right?
And your statements will be made part of the record, I gather.
Yeah.
Okay, terrific. Well, I'm delighted that you're all here. One of the worries that we face as we become a more urbanized society is that we have fewer and fewer connections with nature. So we don't notice when things change in the same way that families that live very close to the land still notice. And I have, I guess, two questions. What are some of the things that you would point out to us as things that you have noticed that other people might not? The change of seasons and the change of habitats and the loss of hunting grounds. If you could summarize some of the things that you've experienced in your own life that is different than it used to be and different than the traditions of your people. Go ahead, Mr. Taktu.
Thank you, Senator Sean and Whitehouse. Back home, we brought home this evidence of our topsoil, which is the sod, you know. When I was growing up Deborah's age, in October, we would have protection from the Chukchi Sea from fierce storms, because this would turn like into brick when we had a north wind. Nowadays we lost our sand dunes because of climate change. Like I said, you know, we used to have freeze up in October, and this would become hard. Now we see freeze up in late December. Even one time we had ice-free waters up to February, so this is very dangerous. And then under this topsoil is real fine sand. This is what our sand barrier line is made out of. It can be about to 8 feet until we reach the permafrost. And once the topsoil is gone, or sand is the same kind of grain like a pepper and the salt, and then it started eroding. And then we start getting undercut. And once it undercuts, the permafrost, you know, when it melts, the high tide comes, low tide comes around, the land collapses, next tide comes and washes out our land. So we can lose approximately like 20 feet of land within an hour due to climate change and the permafrost melting. But this is evidence of our island. You know, this is the topsoil that protected us underneath the sod.
The topsoil would freeze during the winter storm season. And
It would.
be like an armor that protected the sand and the permafrost underneath. Now it's not frozen because everything is warmer, and so it gets eroded itself by the ocean, and it can't protect the sand and the permafrost any longer.
Yeah, that is true, the center.
And how about
Also,
offshore ice? Is that part of it as well?
that is the shore ice too. We hardly see any more shore ice, the thick blue ice we used to depend on. It's very unstable and very hard to tell which is safe ice or dangerous ice. But anyway,
Would the shore ice protect the shore by breaking up the waves before they could reach the sand?
it would, but the slush ice was kind of dangerous. The slush ice would freeze. We're always happy when the slush ice move out and then we have a natural freeze. Because when the slush ice forms, it has no strength in the summertime. You can sink right through when the sun warms up, and this is dangerous. So, that's what we're afraid of in the ocean. We see slush ice because it can freeze during winter, but springtime, we do a lot of subsistence hunting. It makes it a lot dangerous for us to tell which is solid ice and weak ice. We can lose people, doing subsistence hunting to put food on our table. We have major stores in our community, but most of the food is just supplemental to our diet. So.
Well, thank you. Let me yield to my colleagues.
Thank you, Senator. A lot of our Republican friends in the Congress say that climate change isn't happening, and besides, it's not causing any harm, whatever there is of it. And in fact, there's a committee in the Congress that's going to pass legislation to stop EPA from regulating the carbon emissions from coal-burning power plants, which is the major source of the pollution. What would you say to them? They say there's no problem. You're here to say there is a problem. But if you had a chance to talk, if they would show up, if they would hold a hearing with the victims, if they would even hold a hearing with the scientists, they would get a different picture than what they get from the oil and the coal lobbyists. But what would you say to them? Peggy?
Good morning, I'm Peggy. First of all, thank you.
Thanks.
And please forgive me if I stumble on my words. I'm not used to speaking in front of people. But we moved away from Shismaref 8 years ago, and we just moved back to Shishmaref June 1st, 2013. And within that time frame, and by the time we got back, we noticed that a lot of land has been lost. And we're actually staying in the same building or the same apartment that we lived in before we left. Now, before we left, we had like 50 to 60 feet of land right outside our back door. Now, when we open our back door, the seawall is right where you're sitting. So when a storm hits, you get the huge waves crashing onto the building. And
So the erosion is not something that's taking place over a long period of time, but you see it right in front of you happening.
it's right in front
Right
of
in a
you.
matter of
Yeah.
hours sometimes.
And
It's a
the
storm.
bad thing is, we were so happy to move back, but I think we're actually moving out of Shismaref once again at the end of the year due to future storms and loss of land and that thought of having to evacuate in an emergency situation. And that scares us
Absolutely.
because we have 3 kids.
The Government Accountability Office has said to us that there are 31 villages that face imminent threats from flooding and erosion, and 12 of those villages are considering relocation, just absolutely picking up and leaving because you can't live in your home any longer.
And the thing is, Shishmaref is an island. We don't have a road system. We don't have, a lot of people don't have their own boats. So when it comes time to evacuation, emergency, that's just a scary thought. We think about that just about every fall.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Mr. Garcia?
Maybe any of you can answer this, but do you see a change in the type of storm, or is it the same intensity? You're just the sea level is higher. Do you see a change over time in that? And then tell me about beyond the loss of land. What other effects has there been in terms of wildlife and things of that nature? Maybe Mayor Tony, whatever.
Representative Garcia, I make help answer this question. It's not only storms that erode our island. We call another storm silent storm, which is it could be dead calm water. But what happened is climate change. The water rises up, attack the permafrost up way up to our sea level in our community. This warm water action, melt the permafrost, and then we get low tide again. Like I say, dead calm. Then when the low tide comes, you see exposed permafrost melted, and the land collapses. Next tide comes, it washes whatever collapsed into the lagoon or into the ocean. These are things that was that we never seen before. We call silent storms. We used to have our main storm in October. Now we got about 3 or 4 storms a year, or fall storms. So these are evidence that that's eroding our community in Shismaref. I'm not sure what other communities are facing, but these are what we face every year. So every year, the storms get more fierce. The fall storms, and then the silent storm. We call silent storm. The water just rises over sea level, melt the exposed land and melt the permafrost. We have a lot of evidence of methane in our rivers. These kind of things.
I have a few things to say. Because of climate change and changing in climate, we're seeing different things happen. In our language, we have about 100 variations of describing snow. Nowadays, we depend a lot on our subsistence in the wintertime, springtime, fall time, summertime. 7 months out of the year, we're landlocked by sea ice or ice around, our village, and we travel on the ice all the time. In the past few years, we've been seeing a lot of problems where a lot of our hunters are falling through the ice, and we've had we've had one instance where an elder went through the ice in the same area, same exact spot where a young man fell through the ice and lost his life. So changes in the ice conditions is having a big effect on our lifestyle, and we've always had stories that we listen to our elders, and in the past they've predicted these changes that we're not now seeing, and it's something that we've never experienced, so it's something new, and we have the exact same situations that Senator Whitehouse explained about losing a house on the shore, and before, when we were kids, we used to be able to play baseball games on the shore, that's how much space there was. But now we barely have a beach, maybe here to this table here in most parts. So, and our animals, our sea mammals, clamming is one thing that we can't do along our beach anymore because of the loss of our beach. We're seeing seals, walruses having diseases that we've never seen that they've had before. They're having loss of hair on the animals. A lot of the animals are growing tumors, and stuff that we haven't seen, and we're getting, due to the warmer climate, we're getting new plants, and invasive plants, invasive species of bugs, birds, different things. it's almost warm enough now where we're from where we could start planting trees, you know. It's changing. There's no question that the climate is changing, whether it be from climate change or global warming, you know, it's still happening.
Sure, Mayor, go ahead.
I might want to add to Tony's comment. I was born in 1961. I grew up with elders surrounding. I grew up with my grandparents, and there was a lot of elders in the surrounding communities, like Tony mentioned. They knew about climate change just because of the weather pattern. I had a chance to go play out with my classmates, like Tony mentioned, baseball or go sliding outside. But I was more interested in listening to the elders talk about starvation and famine and climate change was one of the issues. They talked about Shismaref or area, Alaska, warming up, and the lower 48 getting more snow. And I never asked questions. I just sat down, and our people, you know, within the region are not shaman. They never practice anything. They're just regular people like myself, regular Inupiaqs. And they knew somehow that Alaska was going to warm up in the lower 48, within the 48 states, the 50 states, was going to get more snow than we have in Alaska. There's evidence right now. You can see the other states having more snow. We're having like, you know, we collected rainwater December, middle part of December, for 3 days straight. So, you know, these are things our elders talked about.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Mr. Huffman?
I want to thank all the witnesses for coming here to tell your story. I appreciate very much the generational voices that you've brought to us. And on that note, I find it very compelling that you appear to be a community where the mere change of a few degrees in temperature, because it causes your soil to no longer be frozen, can very quickly accelerate the impacts of climate change in terms of the loss of land. And I wondered if perhaps you had heard from your elders about whether this was a problem, about when it might have begun. We know it's beginning to happen very fast now, but I'm just curious about the stories that may have been passed on to you. Was this an issue 1 generation ago, 2 generations ago?
I don't think it was an issue, you know, for elders, but but they've. I was seeing like changes coming, you know. One of the remarks one of the elders said to me before was that in your lifetime, you're either going to see a double summer or a double winter, you know. I know something like this kind of happened maybe like in maybe 1775, something like that, 1770s anyway, you know, where you know, where the western states had extreme cold weather, you know, and stuff, and but this is kind of opposite, where it's the weather's warming, you know. There's always seems to be trends, but right now maybe it's a different trend because of the lifestyle that we all live in this world nowadays. You know, we burn a lot of oil, we burn gas and different things, you know, that has an effect on our climate. One thing that, you know, in our planning to assist our community in finding a relocation site, you know, about 60% of Alaska is on permafrost. So climate change is going to have a big effect on, you know, our state of Alaska.
Could you, for those of us that aren't familiar with permafrost, could you explain the significance of that when the
Oh,
permafrost
okay,
becomes exposed and warmed?
Okay, permafrost is like soil ice that that doesn't really melt. Like in the summertime. If you look at this photo here, the bottom part is the permafrost. So in the summertime, um, when you dig the soil in the summertime, it's usually like permafrost is usually like 3 foot from the topsoil. But nowadays, when we dig in the summertime, it's like about 7, maybe almost 7 feet from the topsoil. So, climate change is having a big effect on permafrost. Permafrost melting, methane gas, and causing all kinds of problems from the melting, erosion, flooding. Even our storms are changing, in the fall time, in the late fall, and like in October, November, when our lagoon usually freeze. Sometimes it'll freeze, and then we'll get these freak storms that come out of the south that blows out the ice and then blows right back in, but at the same time have big storms that have a lot of erosion. Growing up, we didn't see that kind of storm. So things are changing.
And I think you mentioned earlier that you said there's been evidence of methane in the rivers?
Yeah, in the rivers and like, in the lakes, you can see evidence of them, because, you see the bubbles coming up and that kind.
Representative Huffman, can I add something else? Even permafrost. There's a good example of what permafrost is in our community. Permafrost is protecting, our land. Once the permafrost melts, this whole land collapses. Not only that, permafrost in our lakes are washing out. We're starting to see evidence of our big lakes drying out. What happened is it looked like somebody get a big old bulldozer and, bulldoze a chunk of the lake into the rivers. It looks funny, but this is what's happening. Also, our elders talk about, I mentioned earlier that Alaska was going to warm up. Lower 48 was going to start freezing. They also mentioned we need to prepare ourselves to go back to old style living, like, fishing and hunting, dog teaming, because whatever grows in the lower 48, like fruit and beef or whatever, we'll have in our stores, but the prices will jack up. We just won't be able to buy them off the stores. So they told us we need to prepare ourselves to go back into, what our grandparents did, live off the land by dog team or, make our own seal nest, these kind of stuff. I never asked questions, but they knew somehow that climate change what's going to happen.
Chairman, if I could ask one additional question. Mrs. Foyana has not had a chance to speak yet, and I know in her prepared testimony she talked about clams. Rhode Island is a clamming state as well. We have a big clam called a quahog that comes from the Native American name, so the clam's been an important species in Rhode Island since very, very early days. And I'd love it if you could tell us, for the record, a little bit about what you're seeing with your clamming.
Every fall, I walk the beaches because I live from one town down, and that's what we like to have. And I love to look for clams on the beach, walk back and forth. I noticed they haven't really been coming up this past year, probably due to the changes in the sea.
So you don't see the clams any longer?
Hardly. Maybe this fall we got probably 10 few clams here and there.
And before was it a food source that you relied on regularly?
I guess it's just where I grew up. That's what I like to eat.
Yeah. We like it too. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman.
Well, I want to thank all of you for being here and telling us your story and what the impact, the real impact is of climate change in your community. I wish all members of Congress were here to understand from your point of view what you're experiencing. We'll share this with as many of our colleagues as possible. But for those who think that climate change costs us nothing, that there's no damage, they should know from you that not only your land is eroding, but your whole way of life and your culture is threatened. And this is something that we have to be mindful of and not just ignore and pretend like the problem doesn't exist or it'll go away on its own. And certainly we ought not to turn our back on stopping the pollution that's going to make problems that you're seeing more and more prevalent all over this country, all over the world. So thank you so much for being here. You want to say anything to
Nothing
closing?
further. I join you in thanking our witnesses.
Well, thank you so much. We're going to close the meeting. Thank you so much.